Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Top Thursday Roadmap to Research. My name is Elaine, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am a Student Outreach Ambassador, or SOA for short, for the Transfer Opportunity Program at UC Davis. Today, I am joined by Top Coordinator Fabian and SOA Anushka. After this meeting, we will email a PDF of this PowerPoint. Our goal is to use this time to show you how to get involved in research as a transfer student. Please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions. Now let's get started. Let's go over some housekeeping rules first. Confidentiality is important to us because you have to be in compliance with FERPA law. If you have any questions or comments you want to ask me separately, you can use the chat option. Just make sure to click my name. It should say private in red. I'd like for you to stay engaged, ask questions, help each other out. Lastly, contribute with accuracy. If you don't know the answer, don't guess. Research the answer and then provide the evidence where you found that answer. This is good research practice. Please be respectful with shared information. All of your opinions and questions matter. So I would like to hear from everyone. Now, just a quick overview of what we'll discuss here. I'll talk about our top services. I'll also share tips about the process of getting into research. Then we will have a research student panel and the faculty panel where you can learn more about their research experience. The Transfer Opportunity Program is an educational preparation program. Our mission is to support and enhance the transfer culture for our college students. Our work complements your college transfer center and counseling services. It is not meant to substitute their services. Our goal is to guide the counselors and students towards a successful transfer process. In your UC tab account, under Support Program tab, you can mark TOP as your participating program. For fall 2023 applicants, please mark TOP in your UC application under the Activities and Awards section as an educational preparation program. Now here are some of TOP's current services available for you on a regular basis. The number one question we get from students in workshops is, how do we find who to contact? If you visit our TOP website, you will see the list of participating colleges. You can click on your primary college to find your school and the person who is assigned to your college. That person is your point of contact. From our main page, you can also see our virtual events like Top Thursday and group advising workshops and announcements and registration for our annual events like Discover UC Davis, Aggie TV, and Aggie Transfer Scholars Weekend. When you visit ucdavis.edu/top website, you can find our services like Top Thursday, group advising, and one-on-one appointments, and instruction on how to register. From our main page, you can click on virtual events to access information. Our group advising is on the first tab, and our Top Thursday webinars are on the second tab. To answer your question about finding who to contact, in our top website, you'll see the list of participating colleges. Click on your primary college to find your school and the person who is assigned to your college. Again, that person is your point of contact. I want to highlight that TOP has student outreach ambassadors, also known as SOAs, like me and Anushka, which is a paid position. It is a flexible job that supports students. You can email an SOA with questions you may have about transferring or life as a student at UC Davis with this email. If you transfer to Davis and are interested in becoming an SOA, please reach out. We're always looking for motivated team members. Now I'll turn it over to Anushka, who will explain how to get into research.
Okay, so let's talk about why even do research in the first place. The nearly 40% of undergrads at UC Davis do research. So please, college is a great place to explore career directions. And doing research will help with that even more. Fabian, can you? Oh, yeah. Next, please. Yes, you can just that. Yes, so research teaches you a variety of transferable skills, such as communication, data analysis, and even more. And in some cases, undergraduates can start their own project, present at conferences, or even get published. How great. Depending on what you're looking into, research might also be fundamental to preparation for graduate or professional school. And you'll also help create new knowledge and impact the world, which is why many people pursue careers in research in the first place. Next slide, please. Next slide. So you might be thinking, how do I even start? The process can seem overwhelming. So the first step is to determine what kind of research you're interested in. It's okay if you're still figuring that out. This is normal for undergrads and encouraged. So after you've identified some areas that you're interested in, then look for research opportunities you're interested in. Then the next step is to apply and reach out to people. And after that, you'll often be interviewed to see if the research opportunity is a good fit. And although these are the general steps to get a research opportunity, it may not apply to everyone. Next slide, please. So how do I find these opportunities? UC Davis doesn't currently have a single place that lists where all the research opportunities are posted. And oftentimes faculty don't advertise these positions either for their own reasons. And some common ways that people get research opportunities, though, are from reaching out to faculty and graduate students whose research they're interested in. Then other people get their positions through Handshake, a student job website. You can also consult the Undergraduate Research Center or attend conferences and networking events. There are also research programs such as the McNair Scholars Program and University Honors Program. And research takes many forms, and depending on your interests, it can be surveys, interviews, data analysis, wet lab work, field work, computational work, design, and so much more. So depending on what you want to do, consider different options to get into it. Next slide, please. So the best way to contact faculty that you're interested in is through email or office hours. But if you use your email, make sure to use your UC Davis email address. And I know talking to faculty can seem intimidating, but if you ask almost anyone, most of them love talking about their research and they love getting students involved. And you can also contact graduate students or postdocs working with the professors that you're interested in, because oftentimes as an undergraduate, you'll be working with them, not directly the principal investigator. Next slide, please. So when looking for research jobs and internships, you might be hearing all of these terms such as resumes, cover letters, reference, and it can all get confusing. So a resume emphasizes your skills, is generally used when applying for most positions, or a CV or a curriculum vitae emphasizes your academic accomplishments and is typically used if you're applying for something in academia or writing a grant. And the length, depending on how much experience you have, needs as a list of publications, posters, and presentations. And when preparing any of these documents, you can go to the Internship and Career Center at UC Davis to get some help on it. And then another very important thing about presenting yourself to faculty or graduate students or for research is to ask lots of questions, and it shows how interested you are. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, oftentimes if you're pursuing a research position, you'll get contacted for an interview, whether it's a paid or volunteer position. So it's important for you to know what to expect beforehand. And research interviews look very different depending on what kind of opportunity or what kind of research you're getting into. But all of them typically want to learn more about you as an individual and the experiences and the passion you have about their research. And like interviews for other jobs, interviewers also look forward to answering questions you have for them. So before the interview, you should know how much time you can commit to research, because being a student is already a lot. And the labs know that, the professors know that, but it's very important that you make this clear with them at the beginning. And then also do some research on the opportunity you're interviewing for. Read some publications, talk to some people, do whatever it is to prepare for that. And then also prepare to share some of your personal interests and past experiences that might be relevant, and identify why it can help you achieve your goals. And then during the interview, make sure that you pay attention carefully to what the principal investigator or graduate students or anyone else talking to you is saying, and then understand what they'll expect of you. And then after the interview, make sure to send a thank you email, just as you would for any other job, to thank them for taking the time out of their day. And then sometimes you might not always get a response after the interview. And professors are very, very busy people. So you should send a follow-up email after 2 weeks or so if you don't hear back from them. Next slide. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our guest speakers. First, our student panelists. So hello, that's me. I'm Anushka Basu. I'm a student outreach ambassador for the Transfer Opportunity Program. I'm majoring in molecular and medical microbiology, as you can see in my Zoom background, and I'm also minoring in public health sciences. I transferred from Diablo Valley College, and last fall was my first quarter in research, and I'm still doing research. I'm in Dr. Rachel Vanette's lab in the UC Davis Department of Entomology, and my lab studies bee, microbe, and plant interactions. And the current research projects that I'm working on is studying the bumblebee gut microbiome and especially the impact of bacteriophages in the gut microbiome, as well as the microbial community of bumblebee honey and comparing commercial and wild bees.
Sounds very intense, Anushka, and I'm very proud of you. Another one of our student panelists is Elaine. Elaine, go ahead, reintroduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Elaine. I'm majoring in neurobiology, physiology, and behavior in the College of Biological Sciences, and I'm also minoring in community development. I transferred from Skyline College back in 2021, and now I'm a fourth year, and I'm about to graduate, so I'm really proud that I'm here so far. And in my lab, I'm under Dr. Diazini Fioravanti in the Fioravanti lab, and her lab is in the UC Davis School of Medicine Neurosciences. And there's a lot of research centers here at UC Davis, so there's plenty of ways to get involved through those connections. And it's nice to meet everyone again.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Elaine. And last but not least, Lauren, did you want to jump in and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I totally can. So my name is Lauren Ward. I'm an undergraduate here at UC Davis, and my major is evolution, ecology, and biodiversity. I'm also have a minor in professional writing that I'm pursuing. I transferred from American River College in Sacramento, and I was also a top student. And then my research mentors are Dr. Jenny Grammer and Dr. Marina LaForgia. So I study plant microbe interactions and how those interactions help shape ecosystem services. I'm also a peer advisor in the Undergraduate Research Center. So if you have questions about how to go ahead and contact the center or get involved in advising, we can talk about that too. And then I recently applied to a PhD program. So I'll be starting my PhD program in the fall. So if you're interested in going to grad school with your research interests, something we can also talk about as well.
So we have quite the array of panelists, and we'll introduce faculty in a little bit, but I did want to ask our student panelist, and if Elaine, you would like to go first. I think my first question is, what made you choose UC Davis?
I think for me, there's a lot of reasons why I chose UC Davis, but one of the main things I would say is the academic opportunities. When I saw neurobiology, physiology, and behavior, I thought it was a really interesting major because just learning about the brain is interesting, just like the connections in our brain and how it works in general. And I actually transferred first into biosci because of my tag agreement, but then I transferred back into neurobiology because it was the most thing that I found interesting. So I'm glad that I got a lot of these academic opportunities. And another thing why I chose UC Davis was the amount of places you can find community. You can find community in clubs, organizations, and you can also just try to find ways to connect with people like in your classes. So that's just one of the main reasons why I found UC Davis as my campus.
Appreciate that. How about Anushka, why did you choose UC Davis?
So I chose UC Davis for a variety of reasons. First of all, it was very convenient for me, but also the community and academic opportunities were just a lot. When I first transferred, I was in Elaine's major, actually, neurobiology, physiology, behavior, but only at UC Davis, really, I got to learn more about research and stuff from faculty and learn more about the different areas of biology, just And there's just like so many opportunities to explore your interests here or at any research university. The type of research I'm currently doing now, the intersection between entomology and microbiology, is something I didn't know existed before I transferred to UC Davis. So you might even learn about a new research area you're interested in.
Great.
Lauren, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when I was getting ready to transfer and I was looking at different schools to transfer to, and there had been this report that came out about UC Davis supporting women of color in STEM related research and just being like a really great frontier like in the nation for like helping advance women of color within different sciences, science fields in science. And so I think that was like a really big thing that pushed me to apply for UC Davis. Convenience wise, it was really close to home. I had thought about applying to Sac State and staying even closer. But I think when I saw that article, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go try to see if I can get into UC Davis, and it ended up working out really well. So
Yeah. So we all have our own reasons, and I think you all really much highlight that part of your educational journey is really doing your research of these institutions and looking at the resources, the majors, the colleges, the faculty that are teaching, so that you could decide whether that's going to be a good fit for you, right? So thank you so much all for sharing. So you all kind of highlighted of being involved in research. So if you could quickly just kind of give me an idea of like, what are the steps that you took to get into this particular position? I know that we highlighted interviews, resumes, and like how to reach out to faculty, but Laura, did you want to highlight how did you land in your current role?
yeah, I totally can. So most research on campus is super informal, and the great thing about it being so informal is that there's an interdisciplinary aspect. So you can do research in any major, in any college, any department. So what we do in peer advising is we really help students write emails to faculty to find different positions. So you identify faculty that you're interested in, and then in peer advising, we'll help you write that email template basically to send to different professors to go ahead and find research positions. So that's what I did to find my current position in my role. I reached out to people. I really wanted to work on sea corals and the lab that was they weren't hiring at the time. They had enough students, but they said, we know the lab across from us works on wildflowers. If you're interested in that, send them an email. So that's how I got involved in my current position, and I ended up finding something that I really loved, even more than maybe I loved corals. So there's lots of different ways to go ahead and find research positions, but I'll say that the cold emailing process is probably the most common.
So I think what I heard was being open to the opportunities, maybe not right now, but maybe around you. Anushka, did you want to expand on how did you get onto your role?
Yes, I also got into my lab through cold emailing, but another piece of advice that I'd like to mention is think more about your interests in the research questions that each lab is trying to answer, because research is really very interdisciplinary. So I would advise you don't just like look at like labs or faculty in like your major, but also go and like look into related majors per se, because there's a good chance that they're using like techniques and answering like questions that you might still be interested in and still does work that your major and skills will be applicable to. So another piece of advice I'll give is just be willing to be flexible, and that it's also a good time to explore your undergraduate things. The first lab that you get into doesn't have to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah, it's all about being open to the opportunity and then also learning from that opportunity. Elaine, did you want to highlight about what your current role is or how you got to it?
Yeah, I can talk more about my research. So just to elaborate more on my lab currently works on the cerebellum. So now the cerebellum is usually known for like being involved in the motor system, like how we move and like move our arms, for example. But recently there's research done on the cerebellum about how it controls emotional regulation and other behavioral aspects. And with my lab, I did a tiny small project about autism, how it connects, how the CHDA gene, it's one of the genes involved in the autism and the cerebellum. So that's just basically the whole gist of my research. I can go on and on about it, but just to keep it short for this panel, that's what I've basically done. And yeah, just to outline how I exactly got into research, I did cold emailing to like Lauren and Anushka, but I was trying to figure out the timing on when and how to reach out to professors because I was actually thinking of finding research a while ago before I got admitted to UC Davis. I learned more about getting into research from a little bit from Top Thursday workshop since I was involved as a top student and also a little bit from the Transfer Research Society, which is an organization here at UC Davis, which you can get involved in and learn more about resources. You can get connected to grad students. So that's how I found a little bit of ways to like find research. But again, it's not really a one size fits all approach with this advice. You have to try to find out like your own way of getting connected. So like while I was trying to figure out the quarter system, I was trying to find professors to reach out based on my major and also just like who's in the College of Biological Sciences. So I think I did around like maybe 2 or 3 rounds of cold emailing. Sometimes cold emailing doesn't work, so it's important for you to try to be persistent. You can like follow up or rewrite emails, like revise how you want to like promote yourself as a person who wants to be in research. So I tried doing that, and I was lucky to found the Viravante lab. And I actually knew a person there already in that lab. So I got that kind of connection. Like she was a student who was also in the same major. So it's kind of cool that we knew each other. So another way you can get connected besides just knowing professors is also trying to talk to other students in your classes. Maybe they're doing research in like a lab that you're interested in. So there's a lot of ways to get connected. And that's how I found my way through research and grew as a student in research.
Well, thank you. And I too, way back in the day, learned about the research opportunities through meeting other students in my major and getting involved in those opportunities. So we talked about research, we talked about balancing your life schedule, school schedule. So I'm curious if you could give me a quick little snapshot of what your day-to-day looks like and include how does the research tie in, what is your time management skills or tools that you have utilized. Lauren, did you want to go first?
Yeah, I totally can. You can be flexible with your research schedule, which is really nice. You just want to work with your advisor basically to go ahead and figure out a schedule that works for you. So for me, most of the time, day to day, when I'm in the research lab, I'm actually working on an independent project where I was like sampling seeds and counting a lot of seeds. But then I also got to do cool stuff where I get to do like microbial sequencing. So basically, I do this like lawn science procedure of trying to derive microbes in some sort of solution from soil samples that we collected. So those are just like some examples of some things that I've done in the lab pretty recently to go ahead and work on. When I first started, it was just a lot of counting, a lot of repetitive tasks, but it's nice because you do those tasks and then you get to see the big picture. It gives you this sort of introduction into this really complex field that you develop kind of your knowledge around by doing those like smaller tasks and stuff like that.
So definitely just putting yourself out there, right? Just like for a job position, being open to different topics, being open to hearing no, or maybe a yes, right? Anushka, did you want to add on to that?
Yes, I'll also share my experience. So, like I said before, your research mentor will understand that you're a student first, but you should probably be at a point where you're ready to commit at least 5 hours or so a week to research before you get started. So I currently do research at my lab around 6 hours a week or so, and I do different things in the lab. Sometimes I'm doing bee dissection, sometimes I'm culturing bacteria from like honey or from bee guts. Other times I'm doing PCR to sequence bacterial isolates. So what you do might also be very different from day to day. So if
You used a lot of words that I don't know, but it sounds like putting yourself in those environments to really gather and learn from the faculty leads, which leads me to my next question, which is for some of you, you discussed what you were doing. Was that a project that you created, or was that a project that you jumped into? Because there's a question regarding like independent projects or publishing or adding to the published work. So who would like to speak to it? Go for it.
I can talk about
Oh.
this stuff. Oh, maybe Elaine, you can talk about it too.
Okay, I mean, you can go first.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I first started by joining. So when I knew I was going to Davis, I reached out to a professor that summer, and I ended up joining this wildflower project. So I got involved at the end tail kind of this ongoing project, and I had questions that I was developing while I was doing that project for a postdoc. And then I was like, oh, can I do my own independent project? And the PI was like, yeah, you totally can. So that's kind of how I went ahead and transitioned from finishing up this project we were currently working on. And then at the end of that, I was like, okay, I still have more questions about kind of the stuff we were focusing on. That I do an independent project from that sort of stuff? And the professor was like, of course you can. So that's kind of how I made that transition.
Yeah, just to add on to my experience too, I did do an independent project, but if you want to consider like making an independent project, you should know like what your goals are with like why you want to get in research and like what you want to achieve from this experience. For me with that experience, I wanted to get units because I got like with NPB, you can take a 199 class, which is basically an independent research unit class. So you can get those units that way. That's how I wanted. I mean, with that class, you have to create your own research project. So I brought that up with my PI, and she said that she's willing to help me, and she also got me connected with the lab manager who was my immediate supervisor. So we communicated back and forth about ways, like with the procedure that I was supposed to do. So sometimes my day-to-day experiment will be like brain slicing. It's a technique for like learning more about the brain and just like imaging. And I also did some immunohistochemistry or immunostaining just to make it easier to see the brain slices, like in a way. So that's some of the techniques. I know I don't want to be too technical in this because yeah, but
I appreciate it. But I think you answered the second part of the question that a student submitted was regarding experience of having experience beforehand. Can any of you speak to maybe having it or maybe not having it? And then any advice that you would give to those students? Elaine, did you want to?
I mean anyone can take it.
Sure, I can take it. So, Lauren, do you want to say something? Yeah, so I understand that this can be a frustrating predicament. And sometimes as a transfer student, you feel that like there's no way you can like compete with people who've been doing research since their freshman year per se. But from my experience, I'd see that there is someone who should still be willing to teach you. And it's really important to have good mentorship as well. And odds are that you probably do have skills, even if you're not aware of them. So you could advertise what you've done in previous jobs or from your previous classes. I know a lot of professors do also look forward to recruiting transfer students since they just do have more life and work experience.
You highlight a huge reminder that I always tell students is like note those soft skills that you have, right? So whether you speak a different language or time management skills, or you work in a job that's very demanding and you are overseeing people's schedule, right? That's a special skill to have. So don't to answer the question, you do not need experience beforehand. What you do need is the motivation to learn and to put yourself out there. Lauren, did you want to add?
Yeah, I just would reiterate exactly what you guys said. You do not need to have prior experience before reaching out for research positions. There's pros and cons to starting your freshman year and starting your third or fourth. I mean, we don't want to wait the biggest things, but when you're starting later, I started like, so I went to community college for 4 years. And then when I got to Davis is when I started looking for research positions. And so when I started there, it was nice because I had all this work experience that I could talk about what I did in community college. And so in that really all those skills that I learned in my jobs were transferable right into research. So there's pros and cons to both.
There was a question in the chat that was submitted about that 2-year timeline, and my advice to students is don't worry about how long it's going to take you. Worry about having the GPA, the units, and the items needed to transfer, whether it's a guarantee through the tag or or taking it. For me, it took me 3 years. Lauren mentioned it took her 4. So there's no timeline how long it takes you. Just making sure that you have the grades and the GPA to meet those particular goals. One last question before we pivot to, and I want all of you to answer this one, is as a student, what's one piece of advice that you would give to another student who would like to get involved in research, and I'll add to transfer, right? To transfer to a research institution. Elaine, did you want to go first?
I'll actually let someone else take it first.
Anushka, did you want to answer that one? Or Lauren?
I can go first, but I think maybe one of the biggest pieces of advice that I got from other students when I was deciding to transfer and just kind of coming into Davis and getting used to being at a really huge university was that what they said was to find multiple mentors throughout your journey. And so like, no, you have to remember that no one person can be the be all end all solution or problem solver to any task that you come across. You know, you really want to find mentors. You know, you want to find your cheerleading mentor, maybe your research and career mentor, your academic mentor. And then you want to have your friends. You just, when you come to Davis, you really want to start figuring out how to develop your support circle. And that was really something that really helped me when it came to being able to be successful at Davis, deciding to apply to grad school, going ahead and going through the grad school application process and everything, and then thinking about what my really long-term goals are, like where do I see myself, my career headed. Those all came from a variety of mentors, and Davis is totally a great place to develop those sorts of things. Davis is honestly one of the kindest universities, and people just want to see you succeed. And so if you reach out to them saying that you need help or you need to go ahead and get some advice on different things, they'll totally be willing to help you with those things. So put yourself out there and find lots of different people who can support you in different ways.
I can go next then. Yeah, so another big piece of advice that I would give to students trying to get involved in research is to just be flexible and explore different opportunities, because you'll be learning a lot of information once you get to UC Davis and exploring a bunch of fields. I know it's very common for people to change their major even after getting to UC Davis and transferring just because they found a totally new thing that they're interested in. So I would say the same thing for research. Look into multiple areas you might be interested in. And another thing that I want to mention is that a research opportunity that you find, it doesn't have to be the perfect opportunity. If I'm being honest, the research I'm currently doing isn't something that I would do for the rest of my life, but I like it for now. So now's just the time to explore.
I agree with both Lawrence and Anushka's advice about like finding mentors, because a support system will really help you go a long way, and being flexible. Sometimes things might not go your way at first, so it's important to adapt and find your ways to achieve your goals in the long run. And one thing I'll add is to figure out how to plan out your time management skills early. It's really important, especially as you transfer from the community college semester system to the course system, which is something I had to find out for myself, especially since I transferred during the COVID-19 pandemic. But there's resources out there, like with professors, they can offer you suggestions on how to balance between their course load. And another thing I want to say, I was able to balance research and all of my extracurriculars, especially also with this job as an SOA, because they're all flexible and understanding with their time. And as an SOA, I get that being a student first is important. So yeah, time management is really key to making sure that you'll be able to like manage everything and make sure that you prevent burnout.
Great advice. And as a former community college student and now in the advisor role, reach out early. That's my biggest advice. I think we're not going to know you need help or assistance or that you're interested in these different areas or research opportunities until you bring it up or we bring it up during our conversation. I did want to answer a question live that was submitted regarding for community college students, can they join research before entering or after entering UC Davis. So depending on the research, right, it may be applicable more once you are a UC Davis student. In a previous session, there was faculty that was open to having community college students. But again, depending on what the research subject is, what, do you need a specific clearance? You need to go to a specific building, are you dealing with a certain demographic? So there's a lot of nuance there that I would recommend following up not only with the faculty or the research that you're interested in, but definitely having those conversations with us, your assigned talk coordinators, so that we could get you in contact with the appropriate folks, okay? So I want to give it a minute or two, and I wanted to invite our faculty. In the meantime, while they turn on their webcams, let me reshare my screen. Awesome. Thank you so much for the question. Let me see here. So real quick, let me share. First, I wanted to introduce Dr. Angelique Louis. So big thank you for joining us today, and also Dr. Georgia Eve Zelu. And the first question that I have for both of you, and if Dr. Louis could go first, is if you could describe your current research, and then I'll ask the same.
Sure. So I'm in the Department of Biomedical Engineering, and my research is actually kind of on the interface between chemistry and biology. We develop contrast agents, so these are like chemical agents to help improve the quality of medical images, and we mostly work with MRI. So we're developing methods to be able to specifically identify markers on tumors so that we can ultimately design personalized medicines to treat those tumors.
Sounds amazing. Groundbreaking. And Dr. Georgia.
Hi. So I'm in linguistics and I focus on speech. So I'm interested in the relationship between speech variation. So every time we say a word, we pronounce it differently. And every time everyone in the world pronounces a word, they pronounce it differently, right? So that's a lot of variation. But as listeners, as comprehenders, we want to try to match that really variable acoustic signal to meaning, to some sort of representation we have, like cat. We all understand what cat means, even though every time we say it, we pronounce it differently. And so trying to understand that relationship between variation and an abstract linguistic system is what I focus on. And my work, I look at cross-language projects. So I've done work, I do a lot of work in English, but I've also done work on French, Arabic, indigenous languages like Lakota, a language spoken, it's indigenous to North Dakota, and also Tashelhits Berber, which is a language indigenous to North Africa. So trying to apply these questions to lots of different languages, not just English. But also another fun aspect of my research is that I'm applying it to digital devices. So now, for the first time in human history, we're not just talking to people, we're talking to computers. So what does that mean for language acquisition and social communication? So yeah, these are the kinds of questions I ask in my research.
I'm very intrigued. So I'm curious, we asked our students how did they get involved in research? So Dr. Louis, if you would like to go first, is how did your research interest develop over time? Was it while you were in undergrad, into graduate school? Was it recently? If you could highlight your journey, that'd be great.
It happens every day. And the journey is the previous speakers, Elaine and Lauren and Anushka, had some great tips on how to get involved in research. And I didn't do it early enough, I feel like, because I was painfully shy for a large period of my life through high school. I didn't ask a question in class in college. I was scared. And so I didn't get involved in undergrad research as much as I would have liked to. I answered an ad, I think, at one point for undergrad research in college, and I did get that job. But then I think I trained maybe for a week, and then the funding for that lab kind of folded, and so the position went away, and I didn't continue further until it was summer of junior year. I did a summer research program at Lawrence Livermore Lab. So that kind of was where I got more of my first foray into research. But my particular research area just sort of unfolded naturally and organically over time. I didn't choose it in advance. I didn't know in advance what I wanted to do. So don't be scared if you don't know yet what you want to do. It's things just sort of naturally unfolded the way they did.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think you highlight that, the journey is not always linear and it ebbs and flows, and you kind of just have to roll with it, right? Dr. Zelu, did you want to mention about your journey?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I have similar kind of story in that I actually didn't do any research in undergrad. It wasn't because I was shy. I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know I could ask professors. I didn't know research was something that I could do. I thought research was something that you do after years and years and years and years of experience. I had no idea. So that was just my ignorance, my naivete about that. But I knew I wanted to go to grad school. I knew I wanted to study linguistics. And so I actually started a PhD program, but it wasn't a good fit. I started and theoretically, like what people were doing didn't really align with what resonated with me. Again, when it came to research, I didn't know what I was doing. And the mentors there didn't really have research interests that excited me or I felt like I myself could do. So I actually switched PhD programs and I started a new one again. And it's just what happened was there happened to be, and even the first mentor I started with in that new PhD program was not a good fit. I wasn't really like leaving his office feeling like I knew how to do it, what I wanted to do. And it wasn't until I found another mentor in that program who, I don't know, she just gave me the tools. She was like, she just taught me things. And that was exciting and allowed me to teach things to other people. And that helped me get even more excited about it. So I asked to work with her. And it was just meeting the right person. And someone who sort of like says like, you can do this, and here, let's do this together, like really modeling to me that she herself is like learning and we have questions and she doesn't know the answer to, but we're going to figure it out together. So kind of really breaking it down, not making it like, someone is born brilliant. Rather, it's like, no, we can figure this out together. And that's how you approach this is figuring it out together. So yeah, that's, again, I was sort of like late. I didn't get started really early in research. It wasn't as I was sort of learned by doing as I was on the job, so to speak.
No, and I think you highlight what Lauren spoke about earlier, which is it takes a village and you have to put yourself out there and you kind of have to ebb and flow and decide, okay, this institution or these faculty members or these set of friends, right, will support me throughout my career and educational journey. But at the end of the day, it's being open to the opportunities that maybe you don't see. My next question for both of you would be, what are some of the skills and experience that you look for in students that are interested in doing research? Who would like to go first?
I guess we could trade off. Yeah, that's a great question. So for undergrads or anyone who, even grad students, if they come to me, really what I look for is just interest and enthusiasm. Someone asked, I think it was a question in the question and answer thing. Someone asked like, oh, what kind of skills, what is one doing in a research position or when you're doing research with a faculty member? When a student comes to me and says that they're interested and I sort of look and they can have a conversation with me and they're excited about the research and they're persistent to work with me, I don't expect that they have any skills coming in. I just want them to be excited and interested. and say that they're going to work hard. And then I'll teach them everything that they need to know. Or they work with my postdoc, and my postdoc is really good at teaching. Or we do a lot of like horizontal learning. So my students who have already worked in the lab who have the skills teach another student. So there's a lot of peer learning too that I encourage, we rely on in my lab. So yeah, just an interest. I mean, even a lot of what I do is on computers, like some basic coding or running programs or using special programs to look at speech and make measurements of speech. And we have students who have zero coding or zero comfort even. They're very scared of using computer programs, but we show you how to do it, and we break it down and we say like, no, you can do it. All you have to do is download this program and, run this software. And so we have we expect to teach you things. All we ask is that you're open, that you're willing to learn, that you put in the time when we sort of give you a task, and that you're interested. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for.
Which is a good skill to have, regardless if it's a research project or a position or out there in the workforce. Just the motivation, the skills, and the willingness and the grit to really learn and get out there.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and I just want to follow up with a little anecdote. There was a woman who took my class, and I actually have an application process because I have so many students who want to work with me. So I have them apply, and we sort of filter through and we choose ones for various reasons. Fabienne, you said earlier, like if you speak a language, that's a soft skill that 100%. So if someone speaks, like has another language that they speak, sometimes that's helpful for us because we are looking at that language or want to think about diving into that language, extending to that language. So any kind of skill you have, even if you speak another language at home or have studied a language, like that's helpful in any kind of research environment. But I had a student, and we have a lot of applicants. We didn't choose her. But she took my class, and she kept coming up to me and said, I'm really, really interested. Are you sure? Like, I'm really excited in this research area. She just kept asking. And I was like, you know what? I like your persistence. That's what I'm looking for, right? I really want someone who's going to put the work in. And if you really are persistent and really are showing me, that you want to be a part of it, that's how we succeed in life, right?
It's extremely motivating when the students are motivated, right? Dr. Louis, did you want to add on?
I was going to totally agree with what Georgia said as well. I don't necessarily require prior experience. If you have it, it's great. But more what we're looking for in the prior experience is that you have a record of being reliable and showing up, and that you know what it is to commit the hours to get something done. And especially if you've produced something in the past, like you did a poster or a presentation on something that you've worked on, even if it was something for class, it shows that you carried a project out with enough understanding of what you were doing that you're able to speak about it in a confident, professional manner. I think the thing that for me is how students kind of hook on to get a position in my lab is that fabulous letter. So I get a letter from a student where they tell me about who they are. They've clearly read about my lab and what we do. They have a specific reason that they're interested in my lab, and they can kind of connect the dots, whether it's your classes or prior work experience or prior research experience. They connect the dots with how they as a person and what they've done could be an asset to me in my lab. And so those kind of letters are like, you know what, I want to bring this person in and talk to them. And just so that you all understand what working in a lab, like my lab in biomedical engineering, you wouldn't be on your own, you'd be partnered with a grad student or with a postdoc. And so that person would spend lots of time investment to train you to do what you need to do. So we're not necessarily looking for experience, but we're looking for people where that investment of time is going to be worth it. And I feel like this will appreciate it and then stick around. So I'm looking for people who can commit that like 10 hours a week to research and will hang out in this lab for like a year or something like that. That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Shameless plug, but yes. What kind of speaking to to what Dr. Zeller was mentioning, is having that soft skill was one of my biggest strengths, and my ability to reach out through a letter was the reason I got involved in research at my previous institution, or at UC Santa Barbara. So yes, it's about persistence, it's about grit, it's about wanting to learn more and being open to exploring all avenues of that research. Let me ask you this. What do you believe are some of the best entry points for students to get into the researcher lab? I mean, you mentioned writing a letter or being persistent. Are there other avenues or channels that you would, or advice that you would give to students?
If you're taking any kind of a lab class, the TAs that you work with are also an avenue. The TAs kind of see you and what you're doing in the lab, and they may be a person to connect to their PI about working in that lab. That's another way to get into it. I think earlier it was mentioned to go to the undergrad research conference, which is coming up in April, and you can look at the posters and who the PIs are there. So those are people who have a track record of taking undergrads, and you can find out more about what they do by looking at these posters and also talking to the presenters about what it's like to work in that lab. Are they supportive? Are they good mentors? It's a good place to mine for information. But the first starting point for getting into research is to really do some research in that you do your internet searches, you do Google, you go to the websites for the departments, you read about what the professors do and what kind of papers have they written, and you look for ones that kind of, when you read about it, it makes you excited and you want to find out more about it, and it sounds like, gee, I feel like this is something I want to learn more about, and I'd like to kind of see what I need to do to get some skills to be able to do this kind of thing in my own future.
So yeah, so going back to those soft skills, but utilizing the research that you did to show up to this webinar, to research the institutions that you're interested in, utilizing that same concept to put yourself out there and to research what you can get involved in. Dr. Z, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think those are great suggestions. I just want to add, talking to, I think someone said, I forget whether it was Laura, Anushka, or Elaine, talking to classmates, talking to friends, talking to lots of departments have peer advisors, as well as staff advisors, as well as faculty advisors. So if you talk to people who are in your classes, or talk to your friends who are taking similar classes, talk to peer advisors. There's lots of people who can, be like, oh, well, this person I know is taking students, or, oh, I talked to that professor and they are doing this kind of work. And, that's the kind of like, so through word of mouth learning about those kind of experiences. So being open, talk to people in classes, like, even if you don't know them, just say hi, like, what are you interested in? Have you thought about research? Kind of learning from your peers is a great way to hear about that information too, kind of in a in a better way than in other avenues.
And I would take it a step further, and also, besides your peers, also the faculty from your current community colleges would also be a great opportunity to stay in touch with, right? Whether it's a letter of recommendation, graduate school recommendation, job, right? Or maybe an opportunity to intern with them. Don't take those don't take those for granted. Keep in touch, and definitely reach out. One last question is, what advice would you give about exploring, let's say, graduate school and beyond for students that are currently getting ready to transfer?
Kind of the similar way that you'll approach researching how to do research or researching opportunities for research is a similar thing, but on a bigger scope for grad school. If you're interested in grad school, a really, really important thing about grad school is that when you apply for grad school or you want to go to grad school, you're kind of specializing, right? So when you're an undergrad, even if you take a major is sort of like specializing, but still you're taking lots of other classes, and the idea is to get a really well-rounded education, Grad school, you just focus on your one topic. And in fact, the outcome of grad school to get your degree is you become sort of a specialist in one specific topic. And so it's really important to do research and to find the grad school that has faculty and research facilities, research capabilities, research specializations that align with what you do. So that's honestly, we have students who apply to our grad program, and some are really good, and we talk to them or their application, and we're like, this is a good student. It's just not, we can't really mentor you because we don't do what you want to do, right? We don't know who would be this person's mentor. So like I described, when I sort of struggled in grad school because I didn't have that sort of really strong, I didn't find that sort of really strong mentor-mentee relationship until later, until many years into my grad school. And then it was easy. I don't know how else to explain this. Like when it's hard, when it's not working, I mean, hard as in you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like it doesn't feel good, right? Because nothing resonated with me. I didn't have that connection. But then when I found that connection, it was late in my grad school career. I had kids. I was dealing with lots of personal things that I was dealing with. I was taking care of a family. But still, I was able to really, really quickly make progress and really, really easily expand and learn how to be a scientist because that mentor-mentee relationship just clicked. So that's really key, and what you're going to look for in investigating programs and reaching out to faculty and making sure you have that alignment, that sort of fit for them to accept you, but also for you to like be happy and succeed in the best way that you can.
Dr. Louie, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, that is great advice. It's the same thing as to make sure you're applying to places where there's at least a couple of people that are there that you'd be interested to work with, and that at least one of them is taking students. But on the other side of the thing of advice of maybe getting into grad school, doing undergrad research is very helpful. In some fields, it's almost required. And when you write in your essays about your research, what we're looking for is that you can see that the whole big picture around why you're doing what you're doing. So the best essays are not just talking about the minutia of the day-to-day of what you did in the lab or what you did for a project, but it actually understands why you were doing it, what's the big question connected behind it, and why is that question important to ask, and how would success of this project impact society or human health? Like, what are the bigger level impact, and that you're curious, like that you have that intense curiosity and you're a problem solver and you want to know why these things are happening. Like, you're not just pipetting, you're pipetting for a reason. So what's the reason you're pipetting? Being able to explain that is a big part of being able to get into grad school. That's for your essays. And I'd highly advise that you do it. So undergrad is all classes. Grad school, depending on the program, could be no classes, all research, or you might have some classes and then you're 100% research. And quite often you get paid. So you get paid either as a grad student researcher, or you might be a TA. And then from grad school, you might go to a postdoc, which is 100% research. And postdoc is like such a fun time of life because you're not worried about scoring your own grants. You don't have to teach. It's 100% focusing on your research. And it's kind of like this fun playground that is a great experience.
So thank you. I think you both highlight, thinking ahead now, having these conversations now is extremely important. There's a question in the chat regarding recommending interning or participating in research conducted at a private company, or would it be best that, once you transfer to UC Davis? I'm going to half answer this, but I'll leave it to you both, the experts. My recommendation is, if you're able to get that internship, that job, get that research opportunity, take it. It's all learning. So regardless of what skills you're going to learn there, or let's say it's not related to your particular major, there's still soft skills that you're going to learn from that experience, right? And the time management that goes with it. If it was paid money. So take those opportunities as they come, put yourself out there. But I'll leave it to the experts to add on to this.
I just want to say, like, in this day and age, like, some companies are doing like academic level research. So one of the problems is the PhDs, you get a PhD or you do a postdoc, but getting like a professor position is really hard. There's so few. So there's lots of people who are skilled as researchers, are doing amazing research. So they look for jobs elsewhere, and companies hire researchers to work and do their own research. So even big companies like Google or Amazon that I know of, they have people who are hired who are just like fancy postdocs. I mean, some are even doing super, super, super advanced research, and they make lots of money. So like and I'm sure biomedical stuff, I'm sure it's the same in the biomedical field. So yeah, I think interning can be actually not only, learning these skills, but you could actually be doing research and working with researchers in a very similar, like very parallel structure to how you would be working in a university.
Yeah, totally agree. Especially in engineering and in my discipline, internships with companies are equally as valuable as research with a professor, sometimes more so, because the typical track after graduation for our degrees is either industry or you go to grad school in order to go to industry again. There's very few that go on the academic pathway. You're headed to industry at some point, depending on what sort of level of director or managerial level you want to be at. You might go to grad school, then go to industry. But going and doing an internship earlier, you get an idea of what working for a company is like and what that company culture is like, to see if that's a place you might like to apply in the future. So the more of those you can see, the better as well.
And I think part of the seeing is also visiting. So for you students that are thinking about transferring, my biggest advice is go to these institutions, come to UC Davis, take a tour. Next week is actually picnic day, which is on April 15th, which is a huge event on campus. So everything's open, lots of good food. So I always encourage students to come, visit, see yourself in these environments, find the people that look like you or don't look like you, and make those spaces for yourself. So
we're going to have a booth, by the way. My lab will have a booth. Yeah, on Hoagland Lawn. Anyway, look for the UC Davis Phonetics Lab booth. We'll be set up. We'll have spectrograms, so like speech. We'll have fun iPads where you can try experiments. So we're going to have a booth at picnic day.
Awesome. And one of my favorite things to do is all the free stuff that you get. Where there's a string backpack, some food, some snacks. You'll get to meet faculty that maybe one day you'll be, working with. I'll drop the link for picnic day in the chat so y'all could check it out. And definitely it's open to the public. Bring your friends, family, kids. Would be a great day. Let me, Elaine, can you drop the picnic day? I don't have any other questions for you, but I'll leave it to the audience. There's a handful of you left. Did you have any questions you want me to answer? Was there anything in specific? I'll give it about a minute or two. But huge thank you both for answering so many of those questions. I think what I come to understand is there's not a right time to do things. There's just make time to do things, right? And put yourself out there.
Actually, we didn't really talk about this, but sometimes transfer students are sort of worried in that you kind of have to come in hitting the ground running, whereas other students maybe have had a year or two to not yet get into research, but now they're familiar with everything on campus, so then they're more plugged into research. But as a transfer student, maybe give yourself a quarter to get used to being here and settling into your classes. And you can already start investigating and identifying people you might like to work for and composing letters. I have a class, BIM 88V, I'm going to post it, and it's called Intro to Research, and it kind of sets you up to learn more about yourself, what's important to you, more about your field, what kind of research is in it, and then you learn to write a letter. So you leave the class with a letter that you can use to start writing to people. 2 units, asynchronous, all online. offered winter and spring.
So make note of that, kids. So definitely a great class to add to your schedule. I'm curious, did any of our students take this class or something similar to it before and getting involved with the research? Anushka or Elaine or Lauren?
Yeah, I didn't take that class specifically, but I took a first year seminar for students in the College of Biological Sciences. You might be encouraged to sign up for it the first quarter you transfer. It was called BIS 198, and they didn't just teach us about research. They also taught us like some tips about like adjusting to UC Davis in general, and also exploring the opportunities in biological sciences. I remember one of our homework assignments was to write a pretend email to a professor, reaching out to them to see how to get involved in research. And then a little bit later, I was doing the real deal and reaching out. So even like first year seminars could help with that.
Good, which is a good opportunity. And part of that conversation will be once you actually are admitted to UC Davis, then it's a conversation with your major advisor in that department about what are the opportunities or courses that you could add. The same thing with like adding a minor, switching a major, studying abroad, getting involved with internships. So there's plenty of opportunities that will happen once you've been admitted, and definitely when you SIR to UC Davis. So with that being said, anybody else wanted to add a few things? No? Okay. So quick, we're going to wrap it up, but I did want to provide a little bit of an overview. So some helpful links for some of you. The transfer timeline is a great overview of what's to come within your first year or within your second. So definitely check out a lot of these links. The other a couple of resources that I dropped was the Research Center, some internship. And again, if your community colleges use Handshake now, it's a great skill to learn and how to utilize that tool so that once you transfer here, let's say for here at Davis, you'll definitely be well aware how to use that tool. So I do want to say a huge thank you to our faculty and our student panel for taking time of their busy day from studying, researching, taking the time to meet with you all today. So if you could give them a virtual round of applause. I will be sending the slides to those that showed up today. Sorry for the confusion with the link, but if you highlight or hover your phone over the link tree, you'll be sent to the top landing page. We do have a couple more Top Thursdays and group advising sessions for the spring semester. So stay tuned with a lot of what we're doing this summer and especially what's coming up in the fall. Okay. So big thank you, everyone. Have a great evening. Good luck with midterms, finals. I don't know where we're at in the semester. Keep up the good work, everyone. Take care.